comment, and the mayor will be joining us here instantaneously.
Oh,
So with that being said, let's make sure we are missing Commissioner from
missing.
Barboa, and we're also missing a couple of our city
Benton.
councilors.
Yeah.
Councilor Benton and Councilor Davis. But nonetheless, let's get started with our public comment. As is our custom, we do have some folks signed up for public comment. Before we get started with that, however, we know that we sent out some public comments to all of you. I don't know if all of you have gotten those. There were written comments that were sent to us. If you have not received them, please let us know and we'll make sure you get them. Additionally, we have, David, how many people do we have signed up for public comment?
5 people.
All right, we have 5 people signed up for public comment. Our custom is to give them an opportunity to say a few words and to the group. We'll limit everyone to 1.5 minutes. And so with that being said, David, can you please let our first individual introduce that person and have them speak?
Absolutely, and I will be timing you for 1.5 minutes. And first up, we have Tamaya Toulouse.
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me?
Good morning, Tamaya. We can hear you.
Thank you first for allowing us to contribute to this conversation. We appreciate the council and the work that you're doing for the homeless community here in Albuquerque. And I wanted to clear up just a couple things that I wanted to make sure that the council knew. First, I'm a lifelong Albuquerquean. My family's been here about 200 years. I've lived most of my life in the Southeast Heights. I'm a Wilson Middle School kid and a Highland High School kid, as were my mother and most of my family before me. I am a One Albuquerque ambassador currently for the city of Albuquerque, which I'm very proud to be. And I am also a previous president of the Siesta Hills Neighborhood Association, where I currently reside. I'm raising my children in this area as well. We've seen a lot of the great projects that you all are bringing to this area. Max Q, redoing the Wilson Pool, lots of other things that are going on here. We're concerned that with all of that development, that a lot of us are going to end up with a very undesirable neighborhood impact from the Gateway Shelter. I would like to say that from what I hear from my peers in my neighborhood and other neighborhoods, although this would not have been our preferred location, the vast majority of everyone I've spoken to really believes that we need homeless services, and we want to make sure that they work here in Albuquerque and at the Gateway Center. So we recognize that the location is set. That's not something we're trying to debate. What we'd like to make sure of is that there's a true action plan in place for how this will be secured, monitored, and run. We want to know who is responsible at the end of the day for running this facility, how it's going to be secured better than Wells Park and other places that have serious ongoing issues
Ms. Toulouse, your time has expired.
Homeless centers, and what your plans are.
Thank you, Tanya. We appreciate in writing. We'd be more than happy to accept that as well as a follow-up if we didn't get all of your comments in. So thank you so much for talking to us this morning.
Thanks.
Go ahead, David. Next.
The next person is Del Esparza.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Del Esparza, speaking today on behalf of the Greater Albuquerque Chamber of Commerce. I serve on our executive committee and oversee the Chamber's downtown revitalization work. For all the various reasons that the citizens of our community may disagree on, with respect to how we address homelessness, there are 2 things on which we all agree. 1, our community desperately lacks overnight sheltering for the homeless, especially within our city limits, and especially among single adults. This is irrefutable. We do not have enough overnight shelter beds in Albuquerque and in Bernalillo County. And those that we do have are far from the city's core and can be difficult to access. As a result, alleyways, storefronts, overpasses, sidewalks, and parks serve as our current overnight sheltering, and there's just not enough. It's inadequate for our homeless, and it impacts our residents and our businesses. 2, we must improve the coordination of services and care for those who are homeless if we ever expect them to be able to find and transition into stable housing. The Chamber has studied this issue of homelessness for years, and we believe that it is imperative that access to assistance and services be co-located, that they be at the same location. Everything from ID recovery to short-term medical care to behavioral health screening, in order to properly support a homeless person and connect them to a full range of help they desperately need to get them off of the streets. The Gateway Center is a critical first step, and the facility on Gibson, an existing structure, is well suited to allow for this coordination to support this population. Because of the fact that it is an existing structure, it will allow us to get to work quickly and coalesce the programs and services all under one roof.
Mr. Sparza, your time is wrapping up.
Thank you for this time. I appreciate it.
Thank you,
Thank
Dale.
you.
Appreciate it. Go ahead.
Person is Charisse Noel, and I do not see her.
Charisse emailed us and let us know she was not going to be able to make it. So the next individual is David Dixon.
He should be.
And Mr. Dixon, you have a minute and a half.
Okay. Yes, my name is David Dixon. I have volunteered with the homeless for about 12 years and have served on the boards of 3 faith-based nonprofits, sharing one. I'm speaking to encourage attention to the behavioral health needs of future Gateway needs residents. I see this topic is on today's agenda. I'm offering 3 easy suggestions. I think these are straightforward. Methadone and Suboxone transportation. There are 3 clinics in the city which provide these services. They start early in the morning because addicts need a fix that early in the morning. As a minimum, I urge Gateway to provide transportation to and from these facilities at those early hours. Secondly, supporting AA and DA, Alcoholics Anonymous and Drugs Anonymous. I urge the city to provide space at Gateway Center for third parties to provide AA, DA, and similar services to Gateway residents. And I'm thinking both in terms of the architectural needs, a space which allows meetings and coffee and cookies, as well as the approval process. I mean, who is it who the city is going to allow to come on to the campus to provide these services? Finally, I think a chapel is important in any organization, community, and I'm hoping that that's included in your plans.
Mr. Dixon, you have about 20 seconds left, sir.
Okay, and I did provide written comments, so if I have to stop, I hope you read. I understand the following are more difficult. PTSD. I believe PTSD is a huge piece of the homeless problem. People experience a significant trauma in their lives and never get past it, and they self-medicate with drugs and alcohol.
Mr. Dixon, your time's about expired, so
Programs to address PTSD are really important. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. We appreciate you talking to us this morning. Do we have anybody else, David?
yes, we have one left, Mr. Benjamin Fox, and I believe he's on. I think.
Good morning, Mr. Fox.
Good morning. I would like to thank everyone on this call and the city for hosting this forum and hosting this discussion. I just wanted to voice my support for the Gateway site and the Gibson site moving forward. I think the tremendous need to have more shelter space and to help those in need in our community has been well established and well discussed already. I just wanted to lend my voice as one of hope and pride. I think the COVID response, this COVID pandemic has, among other things, really illustrated the economic impact in our community and how it has affected some of the most vulnerable people. Many in our community are experiencing homelessness for the first time, and a site like the Gibson site that can offer these centralized services and support for the community offers tremendous hope to those in need. And I think we as a community, we as New Mexicans, and we as members of the Albuquerque community should feel very proud that we are taking steps to protect those and offer services to those and be our brother's keeper. I, for one, am very proud and feel honored to be part of this community that has made this a priority. Thank you.
Mr. Fox, you have about 15 seconds remaining. You done? All right.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Fox. We appreciate you very much. as well. Any other folks signed up, David?
Nope, that is it.
All right, I'll turn it over to the mayor, and our public comment period is over.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone, for your input. And I think each piece too is something that one will touch on a little bit today, but also areas we're committed to working on, whether it was the kind of services that we heard a need for, or it was the broader picture that the last speaker spoke about how we just need to step up, and even on the neighborhood impacts. I think we are certainly committed to putting together, for these facilities, we usually have a plan with the neighborhood that will address, things like security and timing and, the details around the operations of the facility. So they come in different flavors, sometimes called a good neighbor agreement and things like that. So we'll be reaching out and Carol will be talking a little bit about that. So I really appreciate everyone's input on this. And we should then, now we also have, I think, enough folks for our quorum and whatnot. So we're going to go ahead and officially convene and begin our meeting. And so just some housekeeping to begin with. I think, we usually with Zoom, because everyone has their name up, which is great. We can skip introductions except for any designees. And I think you did that at the beginning. So I think we're good there. You can see the agenda, it's emailed out in advance. It's also available on our website. And we will start with the approval of the March 2nd minutes, which have been sent out. Any edits or comments on the minutes? Okay, hearing none, we'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes.
Motion's been made. Is there a second? All right, thank you, Commissioner O'Malley. And so hearing no objection, we'll go ahead and approve the minutes. All right, thank you. Now, we're going to touch a little bit on legislative session. Let me make sure, we might move this later in the agenda. Are we ready to go on
I think
that?
we need to. Isaac is not able to join us yet.
Okay, so we'll just hold on that agenda item and get back to it. And so let's move to a fitting topic, giving public comment, to the Gibson Medical Center and talking about kind of the health hub vision. And so I think there's a number of aspects to this, but we'll hand it over to the notorious Carol Pierce.
Thank you, notorious mayor. Thank you. Glad to be here. I just want to kick off our discussion just with the setting the stage that we really, as we have acquired Gibson Medical Center as of last week, that we are really viewing this as a health hub for our community. And as many people have sought services there over the last 100 years, it's a known place to receive health services. So with the acquisition of Gibson Medical Services, Gibson Medical Center, there are about 9 lessees that are currently in that facility providing vital services to our community. And that includes some behavioral health services, that includes everyday health services that people are receiving, such as endoscopy and dialysis, et cetera. So while we see this as a big health hub where members of our community can go to get services. And as well, we also see this as a portion of that will be our gateway. It will be one of many gateways in our community to connect people, our unhoused neighbors, to emergency beds and the additional services that they need. Some of those services they will be receiving by some of the tenants that are already in that facility. So as we go forward, and we'll be talking a little bit later about our community input as we launch this. But I think for the next step, Mayor, we wanted to go to Gibson next steps, and I think that is Doug Chaplin to get into some more details.
Thanks, and just by way of intro, Doug, of course, is our one of our deputy directors in Family and Community Services. I think folks know he's been around a long time in housing and homelessness. Not to, I don't know how, but I'm trying to say he's very experienced. Yeah. But also he's really gonna be our kind of on-site head of things. for lack of we'll think of a title later. And so anyway, go ahead. Just wanted folks to know kind of his role in this.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. There's advantages to being around for a long time. You get to bring some experience to the table and hopefully share that with others. And it's been an honor and privilege. I'm excited by the one that we're presented with today. So I just kind of wanted to update everybody as to a little bit as to where we are in terms of our evaluation and takeover of the building. David here helped us put together a little brief, a couple of PowerPoint slides that I think will help sort of illustrate some of the things that are going on at the site. I mean, it's obviously a huge undertaking to really wrap your mind around 572,000 square feet and the current tenants that we have. Yeah, please go ahead and cue it up. So start with a 3D image of the Gibson Medical Center, located at 5400 Gibson near San Mateo and Gibson. It consists of about 21 acres, the whole entire site. And if you go from sort of the west side to the east side of the property, it was built largely in 2 phases. This western side, with the exception of that educational building, which kind of has some purple highlights that's sort of near the lower left-hand corner of that slide, was built in the 1950s, that section of the building. And then going back to the west, where you see almost a crisscross shape of the building, was completed in about 1986. The other thing that this slide will does for me, and I think it really illustrates the depth and the complexity of this particular property. It's 5 stories at its height. It comprises, like I said, of 572,000 square feet, and primarily is occupied, with a few exceptions, by our current tenants on the eastern end. And we'll kind of move through that site, but this gives you a really good sense of when you're walking around Gibson on the inside, you can spend hours in there and never even see the same room twice. And so we're attempting to do that. So that gives you a little bit of a sense. Go ahead and go to the next slide, David. Again, this is just an aerial view of the entire site. It's largely a triangular shaped piece of property. At the top of the screen, you see Gibson Boulevard. At the lower left-hand part of the screen, you're going to see kind of the diagonal parking spaces that create our southern boundary. And then on the left-hand side is the western portion of the facility, kind of identified by the X shape of those buildings. And that just sort of gives you a sense then from above. And go ahead, one more, I think we have. What you have here is the actual existing site plan of the Gibson Medical Facility. Again, towards the top of what you're seeing is Gibson Boulevard. We have the diagonal parking strip along the bottom that creates that sort of southern border for us. And again, as you go from right to left, the right side is mostly older buildings, and then the left becomes a little bit newer in terms of 1986. The current, let me talk a little bit about the current tenants and where they're sort of located throughout the facility, the relationship to the community, and the things that we're trying to accomplish as we move forward. Let's start, David, on that yellow building on the far right. That's a little outlier building. It's only about 1,800 square feet. That's Bluestone. We're going to be meeting with them in the next week or two to find out a little bit more of what they do, but they're a supplier and a consultant for different agencies around the state, including some of the Indian Health Services. And so we're anxious to talk to them a little bit further. As you move towards the next yellow structure, kind of moving from right to left, David, that's the educational building. And it's largely vacant. It has smaller offices and has a really nice auditorium in there as well. If David, if you kind of go down from a 90 from that educational building. Yeah, keep going down. So in that particular area where David's pointer is now is building 11. That consists of 2 stories. It's about 11,000 square feet. The bottom portion is vacant. The top portion is occupied by Zia Solutions, which is a in-home behavioral health provider. We've had some excellent conversations with this tenant. They're very excited about what we're offering and what we're planning to do at the Gibson site, and they're very much interested in continuing partnership. Right now, they offer in-home behavioral health, largely in nursing home facilities, but they're looking to expand that. The next building going north is our plant facility. Go ahead and go back a little bit down. There you go, right there. That houses a lot of our boilers and our chillers, and that sort of thing. Very impressive in its structure. And then if you'll go, David, to next to the educational building, there's kind of a little right below it. Yes, sir, right there. So that's one of our first tenants that is on the first floor, and that's Fresenius Dialysis. They've been in this community for about 20 plus years. Leon and I went and spoke to them the other day. They've been there. They're happy to be in that community, and they've been offering a valuable service for many, many years, and we hope to retain them as we go forward. Also on that particular end of the building, on the first floor, is going to be there's a kitchen that we're commercially leasing out, and then you also have the Department of Vocational Rehab with the state. That will be incredible. That will be a good partner for the city of Albuquerque as we connect individuals back to jobs as they move through the sheltering process. We can anticipate collaborating with the state in that particular area as well. And then continuing to the west, David, let's go to the far west part of the building and kind of the south half. Okay, that particular area is occupied by the Department of Health Turquoise Lodge. Turquoise Lodge offers inpatient behavioral health and recovery services. They have a very good program there. They offer both social and medical detox and recovery. We're in conversations with Shauna there about potential ways that we can partner going forward in the services that they offer. And then moving towards the north, in that kind of northwest corner, you have Sandia National Labs. That's kind of a call center that supports the larger Sandia National Labs efforts. We haven't had the opportunity to explore very many options at that particular with those folks yet. And then as we kind of move up the building, also on the west side, we're going to have AMG Specialty Hospital, which is an acute long-term care facility. They occupy space on the 3rd floor of the triangle. And then we also have Haven Behavioral Health that occupies the entire 4th floor. And they also have a small office on the 3rd floor that does outpatient care, but their space up on the 4th floor is all inpatient, kind of a longer term behavioral health care that is offered. And so there's a lot of natural connections for the tenants that are currently there to what we're going to be doing. We've had a fairly good response in our conversations with them. They're excited at the opportunity, that's sort of the excitement and the energy that the city brings to the table. And they're looking for opportunities to partner with us going forward. So we've been very pleasantly surprised in that area. We're challenged right now with kind of changing over from our, the cold months to the summer months and older, heating and cooling systems. And so we're trying to get that done and keep our tenants, operating and as happy as possible. So I think that's kind of a nice overview as to the status. There's going to be some exciting opportunities here to continue to work on our medical respite so that when individuals are discharged from hospitals, they don't have to go back on the street. And then what would normally, for those of us that are housed, be just kind of a normal recovery period that could actually be exasperated and worse, and have caused rehospitalization and inability to work, and just kind of continue that downward spiral for them. We really want to continue to beef up our behavioral health services. I think there's opportunities to create spaces for treatment, for groups, for individuals, that you can come on site and really have a lot of amazing supportive services at your fingertips if you'll be staying there. And then, of course, the connection to housing. We want to continue to make those connections, and we will be working closely with the case managers as they do exit plans for individuals once they're into the shelter that will take them. So I think that's where we are.
Mayor, if I might add just a couple of other things real quick for the benefit of the council. We have an architect on board that is working with Doug, and Leona Espinoza, my assistant, is working with Doug on this project because it's a high priority obviously for all of us. And we have an architectural firm looking at the entire building, those areas that are not occupied by current tenants, to evaluate what kind of additional rehab, if you will, we will need to make or have in the building to bring our facility in line with what we all want to see happen there. So that process is going to go forward for the next couple of months as they evaluate not just the systems, but the layout of the floors, how this makes sense in terms of its functionality, and also looking for opportunities potentially for additional tenants that might come on site, or other supportive services, such as Doug described, the medical respite portion of it, where we might be able to put some, if you will, some beds there for that particular service. Looking to see if there's any other opportunities for additional behavioral health services that we might be able to partner with Bernalillo County on. And then additionally, there may be an interest from some of our current tenants to relocate. There's a building way at the far west side of the facility. It says here on your map, it says cosmetic surgery. That facility is vacant right now. It's a nice standalone facility that, as we move forward, perhaps we would relocate one of our existing tenants so that we could create a wing of the hospital that may be related to a shelter slash respite facility, and relocate so that we continue to keep the services intact as people have gone accustomed to. And then the last piece I would say, Mayor and Council, is you look at this site, there is a sea of parking, which I think creates an opportunity for us to look at down the road, opportunities for other facilities and or other uses that would complement the services that we're offering there at this site, to make it really a health hub for the community and for the city as a whole. And then last but not least, one of the major issues that we all know that is happening in our community with folks that are living in our streets is a lot of them are veterans that have that need veteran services. It is really important for us to note that the Veterans Hospital is right across on the south side of our boundary for our buildings. So I think there's going to be even better opportunities for us to provide good health services for our veterans, especially those that are wandering our community. And so it really is a work in progress, and we'll continue to keep the council updated through our facilities committee. And but I just wanted to let you all know that that's what's currently going on as we move forward.
Thank you, Lawrence and Doug. And I would just add that there is a chapel in there.
Yes, there is.
To the public comment. There are all sorts of interesting things. Just as a side, more intrigue note, there's some wood paneling from Teddy Roosevelt, literally, or FDR. Yeah,
FDR.
Other Roosevelt, in one of the offices. But anyway, there's just a lot of space to do a lot of good. But we also know that it's gonna take some time to figure it all out. And we're going to really use experts, whether it's service providers or architects and so forth, to, kind of digest what's going to happen. And so that process will take quite some time. I also would mention too that there are some other, there's an atrium that I think many folks have seen this, but there's sort of these iconic places that almost everyone in Albuquerque and central New Mexico has memories of, whether it was where they found hope and healing, or where their loved ones passed away and things like that. But that's still all in place, and so it is. I think you'll see when you get a chance to inside and stuff. It's a special interior as well, and something that triggers a lot of memories for folks. So with that, oh yeah, Councilor Benton, thanks. Questions, discussion.
Yeah, just quickly, Mayor, thank you. So I'm assuming the architects are kind of using or they are specifically using the descriptions of the facility that were formulated by this council and its committees, right? As far as the shelter component and the, I guess the shelter component specifically.
Yes, they are, Councilor. We're looking at what we've come up with in our framework, and yes, that is what is guiding them in this process. And just so I may say this, Mayor, and I forgot to include this in my previous statements, we do have a commercial kitchen in that facility, and I think it's really super important given the conversations we've had about the West Side facility and the need for a kitchen. This kitchen is significant. And I say that because not only is it today providing food for the current tenants that are on the facility, but obviously has the capability of serving the entire site. And so as we move forward with our development of our program, this kitchen will certainly be an asset to the services that will be provided there on a day-to-day basis. But anyway, go ahead, Mayor. I just want to put that comment in.
Yep. Other questions and comments? Yes, Commissioner O'Malley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Lawrence, do you have a project timeline at this point, or are you still doing some preliminary work on what's going on?
Commissioner O'Malley and members of the council, we are right. Really, we just really had access to the entire site here just within the last couple of weeks. So we are working on a timeline. We hope to get to the facilities committee a timeline at our next meeting, just to give you a breath of appreciation for the size of this. I mean, I gotta tell you, it's interesting. Leon and Doug call me on a daily basis, tell me they found another room, another corner, another pocket of opportunity that we hadn't seen before. So if you all would give us a little bit of time, probably at the next facilities meeting in a week or so, we can give you a little bit more of a horizon in terms of timeline. But rest assured that the work that will need to be done at the facility it is going to take a little bit of time, just simply because we want to make sure that we're conscientious about the needs of our tenants who help us, by the way, with our operating costs for operating the building, which is another big plus aside from the services that they're providing. Making sure that we respect what they've got under their contracts and sort of section off the building, if you will, so that everyone is working on their own areas in a harmonious manner, but also creating those connections. So we'll give you a timeline here in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, thank you. Well, we know what it's like to be responsible for a large facility.
Yeah. There you go. Would you like another one? I'm just kidding.
No.
Okay, and so we'll continue our questions and comments. I would just add to that, you know, the previous owners were, you know, I think they had some privacy concerns that a lot of the providers do with respect to us kind of, you know, walking around and having a bunch of folks in there and so forth. So I do just want to acknowledge that, you know, we weren't really allowed, for better or worse, to do a lot of research in there until we got the keys. And so that is also why, like, we literally are just starting. We tried to do a lot of assessments in the 3-month negotiation period going back to January. And without going into details, we just were not permitted to do that. And so that's also why we're getting started on that now. So, and I know we have a question, but let me introduce. We have, I think we might have mentioned in the beginning, but the county commission has made some changes in their appointments to this committee. And so we're honored to welcome Commissioner Barboa as a full member of this committee. And she's also here for comment and question. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you, and thanks for introducing me. Yeah, Commissioner Piscotti was like, I'm handing off the baton. So I was like, okay, it's a good baton or a bad baton? Just kidding. Yeah, thank you. And I'm sorry I got on late. I had another scheduled meeting, but I'll make sure these are on my calendar. I wanted to just make sure, when I got on, I heard Carol, the end of Carol talking about the public comment opportunity piece. And then now to hear the architects also talking about developing a plan, both that that's flexible and that those public comment pieces are aligned throughout, right? Like if we're talking about architect, it sounds sort of like we're setting up something and then we're having public comment that's separate, but how they're maybe together or continuous. And I'm interested in helping Carol as much as I can to think about those public comment spaces and what they look like.
Thanks so much. And we'll be touching on that a little bit more too in our next agenda item.
Yeah.
Other comments on the plans and whatnot that we shared in the schematics? Yes, Councilor Benton. Architect.
Just quickly, yeah, retired architect. It's even more dangerous than a practicing architect. So yeah, my question, kind of a follow on. We kind of in our first round of work as committees and so forth, we described this facility and other facilities, including north of downtown. And with regard to shelter specifically and respite beds. And there was a question from Ms. Toulouse about some of her questions, which I think, I know that we're not prepared to answer all of those, but I think, as I recall from her comments, the specific question is wanting to see the plan, right? And so I know that we're developing that, and we've got to at least flesh out the existing building program that's been described already in previous sections of this committee or commission, council, excuse me. Get confused about what to call it, but the council itself has adopted those, and we know that there's some procedural zoning matters that have to be settled for us to occupy this building with shelter beds. So I wanted to, I think, to me, that seems to be part of the critical path, right, of this project, is to get past that stepping stone of having the conditional use permit for the shelter approved on this site. And the neighborhoods, of course, will be instrumental in their comments on that. I know Carol's got a lot of experience with some of our work downtown on previous projects, not shelter per se, but relations, good relations and good conversations with the neighborhoods and commitments that the city's made to the neighborhoods, et cetera. So with regard to that, and while we continue with all the analysis of the buildings and so forth, I think we still understand the basic components of what's going to be proposed. And I wanted to ask if that's something that we're close to having a timeline on, just as a follow-up to Commissioner O'Malley's question, which is about the whole thing and the entire timeline. That seems to be certainly a top issue in the critical path to moving forward.
So maybe, thank you, Councilor, and I'll share a couple of things and then some other folks will jump in. number one, and you know this from the Good Neighbor Agreement and Hope Works, we want to work on a lot of these issues, even that were brought up in public comment about, what's security going to be like, and what's the ingress and egress and all this. We'd like to do that with the community. So like the answer is, we don't have an answer yet, and that's okay. Like we just bought it. So, I'm just letting everyone know, like, there is no plan, because we want to work on the plan as a committee and as a community. And I also know that now is when the experts have a lot of say, meaning that whether they're architects or service providers who deliver, behavioral health or all the other range of services that we've talked about, that's who needs to be heavily involved in these discussions now. I think at a high level, even if you think about this committee, we got to this point and we purchased the location, and that's great. But now we need to really have the folks who know what they're doing present back to us what the plan is, right? And that's what they're committed to working on. And so that's just the reality of where we're at in the process. And I would also mention that even things like who's going to run what and things like this, it's such a huge facility. Remember, there are entities in there already under lease. So like they're running, Haven runs their own thing, Turquoise Lodge runs their own thing. Our West Side Shelter, we use the term our West Side Shelter, but it's run by Heading Home. It's not run by the city of Albuquerque. So, I don't know if any of this will be run by the city of Albuquerque, or maybe all of it will be run by the city of Albuquerque. That's what we have to do as a community. And that's what I think all our committees are for, and so forth. And everyone knows when you invest 14, 15 million of public dollars, we're going to figure it out. But to Commissioner O'Malley's allusion to what it's like to buy a large facility, we are going to work with the community and experts to come up with the plan. It's not just going to come down from on high. That's just not how it's going to work. So anyway, but with more detail on that, do you want to start?
Yeah, no, thank you, Mayor. And I do want to say that the work of this council and the 5 committees is critical. That what created the framework, of which we launched from the framework and all the pieces that are there to add those details. But
Mr.
thank
Mayor?
you, Mayor. Oh,
Mr. Mayor, if you wouldn't mind me interrupting, Carol, I know you're what the mayor said. Could we at this point, at some point anyway, at least respond, or maybe Lawrence could respond to the questions in the chat, that way they just don't get lost.
Okay, and I think we verbally touched on a lot of them, but we'll see whoever is running that.
Well, okay, however you want to do it, but okay. Thank you.
Okay, no, thank you. So as we move through the community input, I just do want to reiterate a couple things that were said. We're now entering phase 2, what we would call phase 2, which is really getting more of that community, the provider input, now that we have full access to the facility. So phase 1 is really the acquisition of the facility that was completed last week. And now phase 2 begins that engagement with the community and providers. So I'm very excited and looking forward to, we've reached out to the 5 neighborhoods that surround directly right around Gibson Medical Center, South San Pedro, Trumbull Village, Siesta Hills, Elder Homestead, and Parkland Hills. We've had our first round of communication with them, and we're setting up meetings, asking if we can be on the agenda for their next neighborhood meeting. I think a lot of those are Zoom. We're hoping to do that this month. And the way we picture that is we want to provide initial information, some of the thinking, as well as have a dialogue on what some of the thinking and the concerns are and ideas that may come from our neighborhood. So we're really looking forward to that. And I think we're close to getting our first one scheduled. So looking forward to that. We also have a plan and have begun to reach out with our businesses that are nearby. We intend to do that also through some mail outs so they can know who a key contact is over at Gibson Medical Center. We think having a good connection and relationships with our surrounding neighbors and businesses is really important. So throughout, I see that from the timeframe standpoint, April is really critical to have those neighborhood meetings and the business outreach. And I'll say that part of that includes in our outreach plan, it includes key neighbors such as Veterans Administration and the schools. So we have several schools that are nearby there, Kirtland Elementary, Wilson Middle School, the charter that I can't remember the name of, but we think we want to have all those individual conversations with all of the nearby people close to us. And so this is just step one, if you will, throughout April, early May, because as we go through this process of adding services to Gibson and getting the input, there will be ongoing dialogue with our community neighbors. And as was referenced by Councillor Benton with our earlier experience with Commissioner O'Malley and Councillor Benton, when we did a project here with HopeWorks, we have a good neighborhood agreement. We learned a lot through that, really good conversations with our neighbor partners. And we imagine we will build on that experience as we move forward there in the Gibson area. So while we have this first building relationships, if you will, in April, this will continue throughout the process as we establish services there. And I do want to, one of the common myths that I think is always important to say is we, the city, in our budget this year, don't have like 100 new positions or anything like that to staff Gibson Medical Center. So we will continue to build on the expertise in the community and with our partners, county and UNM, to provide some of those services. So those are typically done through an RFP or an intergovernmental agreement. And we really look forward to building on expertise of behavioral health with the county, for example, respite services with UNM. And then we've got many of our other partners that we would be doing RFPs to get those services in there. So we look forward to just building on those long-standing relationships. So I do think it's really important when we think about community input, we think not only of our neighborhoods, but we think of the people with lived experience. And so to speak to that, I'd like to call Quinn up. And we talked about this a little bit at our last council meeting. And so that survey with people with lived experience continues on. And I think that's an important piece of this puzzle. Thank you, Quinn.
Hi, everybody. So the lived experience survey is still live and still being completed by folks out in the community, both by folks that work on the streets and also folks that are currently in shelter. So from what I know at this point is I have about 45 completed surveys waiting at the WEC. I have to go pick those up and enter them so we can get a good data report out of that. But this is going to be really fantastic and integral to our design of the shelter because it does ask very important questions around shelter design and what is important for folks that actually attend shelter. What is meaningful? What kind of things are needed? So I really look forward to hearing and seeing the feedback from those surveys.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Quinn.
Okay, so a couple of things we'll take some more questions and so forth. A couple of things that council usually follows a policy in terms of questions and so forth. The Family Community Services team, if folks want to email their questions or just cut and paste the chat over to the same email for the committee, they can answer those. Council just doesn't respond to chat real time during council meetings, so we're following those rules. So that's just to clarify that. Also, Carol, maybe if you could be specific though, I think it might have been lost a little bit. What is your plan for community input? Just specifically, who are you reaching out to and when?
Thank you. We have reached out to the 5 neighborhood associations that directly surround Gibson Medical Center. And we are scheduling, asking to be at their neighborhood association meeting in April. That's one. Okay. 2, we are reaching out to the businesses that are surrounding Gibson Medical Center this month as well.
Great. And this meeting too, we will try and make sure that this is as per the agreement we have for this committee. All of the minutes of this meeting are always on the website, and as are the public comment, and so are the recordings of this. and they have been since this started a year ago. So there's lots of good information up there if folks want to look back. Also, the subcommittee meetings, we'll talk a little bit about scheduling near the end, but the subcommittee meetings are really where a lot of this work has been done, and where there are multiple community members in the different committees. So there's actually, for folks who are new to this particular venue, I mean, I think there's at least several dozen, if not almost 100 people, if you added up all the different committees and all those who are involved. So, the purpose of this committee was to bridge UNM, the county, the city, and providers in a public venue. And so we'll continue to do that, and that information has been and is all on the website. Okay, so other questions or comments for Carol or others on we're on kind of agenda item, community input, and lived experience survey.
I will say thank you, Counselor Peterson, for adding Whittier Elementary. I didn't name them, but we are aware of our school outreach, and they are top of our list as well the month of April. So thank you for that.
Okay, and as a reminder too, if folks do want to get involved in that, that is through the committee process with, there's lots of public folks involved in that. Okay, so let's.
County Manager Baca had her hand raised.
Okay, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to just sort of reiterate, and we've talked about this before, and I've discussed this with Commissioner Badboa and Commissioner O'Malley. So we're going to be taking an inventory of the services that we're providing internally and externally, working with nonprofits, just to see if there's any of those that could be a fit to possibly being relocated at the Gateway Center. So we're looking at that and just want you all to be aware of that. And because we know that there could be some really great programs that if we relocate them, that they'll be more accessible to the individuals there. So just know that, and also know that, we are expanding our CARES campus as we speak. It's going to be, there'll be more services. So that doesn't mean that, we'll just keep them there, but we can possibly bridge services too. So, and work together. So just want to let you know that, that we're working on that.
And if I can just follow up with that, thank you, County Manager and Mayor, folks on this. I do feel, and I'm just as a sort of newcomer to this table and not knowing the weeds or details of all the plans, that I do feel like either it's a messaging missed opportunity or we're not talking clearly about, in my opinion, directly enough about addiction and treatment services. There's a whole way that our community receives both how we think about homelessness, how we think about addiction treatment, and how every one of us that grew up in New Mexico have somebody that has suffered with addiction of some sort, right? So I just think, I don't know, I definitely offline conversation. I feel like it's a missed opportunity to really show what kind of opportunity this center can be for all our families, and that at the same time, it's not this place that folks, as we develop it, right, that this is a place for all our families. It's not like those homeless people, as sometimes we get to talk about them, right?
Yeah, thank you. Okay, thanks so much, Commissioner. Let's see. Okay, and thanks so much, Commissioner. We're working on the digital hand raise there. Okay, we got it. So, all right, other comments or questions on this item? Okay, we'll proceed on the agenda to our next update from UNM Medical Research Institute. And so we'll hand it over to Team UNM for that.
Thank you, Mayor. On behalf of President Stokes and Dr. Ziadonis, I'll be presenting the report. I'm Mike Richards from the Health Sciences Center. And so the main items for today are that they've essentially established a team, which they're calling the Homeless Research Task Force. That work group is now established a regular weekly meeting schedule. It's multidisciplinary in its construct. Julie Page Reeves is the lead on behalf of that group for UNM. She's been in close contact with other members of the coordinating council to help work out the scope of work of this homeless research task force. They've also been collecting some data, which I'm not as close to the specific data sources to have this entire process be data driven. The data sources are currently being vetted by the work group, and they've also engaged some learners within the HSC to start doing some detailed literature review on best practices to help drive the work of this research task force. And so with that, Mr. Mayor, I can stop and collect questions, which I will take back to President Stokes and Dr. Ziodonis.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. And questions or comments for Mr. Richards?
If I could say, and thank you so much, Mike, we're really excited with the conversations that we've had with UNM because those two research topics were born out of the rich work of our committees. One of them on housing and just what are the different models of housing we really need in our community. Right now, we're a pretty scattered site model. What else can we do there? And that comes right out of the housing committee. We're really excited about that research. And the second one is about neighborhood impacts. As we address the needs of unhoused neighbors, how do we do that in a way that works richly with our community members? And so that directly came out of our services committee. So Mike, we're really grateful for UNM's research acumen and knowledge to really lead us in this way, because this will be really important for our collective community work. So thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Carol. And Mayor, the President Stokes and Dr. Ziodonis send their apologies for not being able to be here this morning. They're at a Regents meeting where there's budget approvals occurring today.
Thanks so much. Okay, other comments on this? Okay. All right, now let's hear from our subcommittees or committees and on some of these different topics. And so we'll start with coordinated street outreach.
And I think, Mayor, that goes to Deputy Uval, who's on the phone. And I think given our time, we always want to just hit the highlights of our high impact strategies that come from the coordinated framework and how we're moving those along.
Good morning, everyone. I think just really very quickly, we our coordinated street outreach committee is now meeting once a month. Commissioner Barboa is our new co-chair from the county side, which has been fantastic. When we met last week, we actually really focused on using our time to review the city's draft policies related to encampments, which was very helpful. So a little outside our normal scope of work, but seemed like the right group to provide some feedback on those policies. And Commissioner Barboa facilitated that conversation, which I really appreciated. She did a great job. So that is the kind of the latest news on the Coordinated Street Outreach Committee. Commissioner, I don't know if there's anything you'd like to add.
No, thank you. I'm enjoying the opportunity.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Lisa. Youth Housing Continuum
is our Quinn.
Quinn.
Hi again. So the Youth Housing Continuum Committee is chugging along at a lovely pace. We have our youth housing needs assessment that is taking place currently. It's happening. We have a leadership team that is comprised of local service providers as well as CYFD and other providers in the county to move that along, to think about how we're going to do this, what's the best way to do this. And so that's including both a youth count and also an organizational assessment. So we've narrowed down to 10 agencies that we're going to dig into around youth provision and how they're doing that. And then also, so that'll be looking at the agency from executive leadership to middle management all the way to frontline. And then the youth count, we'll be training a youth advisory board to do the count and also to I lost my train of thought because Carol's giving me eyes.
Oh, no. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, it happens, it's the life. So that's working really well. And then we're also moving forward to recommend a young adult shelter. So that would be for young people that are transition age 18 to 25, because we know that brain science tells us that that is a unique age for young people, and they often slip through the cracks. And so we do need some special programming for those folks. So that's my high fly update for that.
And sorry for the eyes, because all very important updates, but I think Quinn is the next one to do services committee.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, let's just see if
Oh,
any questions for youth housing continuum. Okay. All right, Quinn, back to you.
Thanks, Mayor. So services, we've been trying to nail down a meeting date because we got a little messed up in our rotation, but that's okay. So in terms of high impact strategies, we've started with our number one high impact strategy, which was the need for need for emergency shelter. And so all of those recommendations have been passed over to our architect to look at GMC to figure out how that will work together. And then also with the UNM Homeless Research Task Force, they're also looking into another one of our high impact strategies around mitigating and evaluating neighborhood impacts. So they're getting started on that as well. And soon we'll be contacting our neighborhood representation that is involved in the Homeless Service System Committee. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Questions on homeless services?
Looks like
Councilor Benton.
Thank you. I'm still slow on getting my hand raise function. For question, Quinn, and this was brought up in some of the public comment, transportation, that aspect of the emergency shelter, and I suppose also to some extent the medical respite, but primarily the emergency shelter component. Is the services committee looking at transportation? Mayor or somebody mentioned ingress and egress being important to this and other sites. Is that being discussed actively at the services committee?
Absolutely. So early on, it was discussed very strongly that a robust transportation system would need to be developed, whether that's to get folks to the shelter or to also get them to where they needed to go from the shelter. That has been definitely part of our discussion. And thinking about how that gets built out, we'll be addressing that soon with Gibson and understanding ingress, egress, all of that, and also some of the community needs.
Okay, yeah, I think, the discussion over the years, right, has been, well, what are the size of these facilities? The one in downtown has been described in some approximate terms. We know what the west side is in the interim, at least, what its capacity is. And then, of course, the downtown, the downtown is proposed facility has not been fully defined in terms of its size, I don't believe, in terms of capacity. But, there's been seemingly overwhelming community agreement that we should distribute the shelter beds to some extent through the city. And I think transportation is the key part of that. And also others who are still in the system, if you will, whether it's for addiction or alcohol abuse or mental health services that will be coming to this site, figuring that out and not just saying that, well, this will all be handled by the public transportation system is really an important part of this whole discussion. Very important to the surrounding neighborhoods, obviously, of any of these facilities. Thank you.
If I may, and thank you, Councillor Benton, for that important question and comment. Currently, we do use the VIC, the Veterans Integration Center shuttle. And that is so helpful because that can take people to the direct services they need. Public transportation is important, but that's not the full solution. So we vision, as just as Quinn has spoken, that as we add other gateways to this system, it is a system solution here, is that VIC transport or other specific shuttles would be added to connect people to services. That's an extremely important piece. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Just quickly, if I could, to follow up on that VIC shuttle, I think, we started it years ago as a pilot project. It proved itself right away. Adjustments were made. We had a lot of input from our transit people, our transit department, who are certainly experts in getting people from here to there. So that in and of itself, I think, is a beginning of the kind of thing that we're going to need to service all of these. So thank you.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that we already do this. So that shuttle does exist. We already have multiple centers. We have 3 hotels filled with homeless individuals right now. We have 300 people out on our West Side shelter, and there's a shuttle that works between them. As you know, our shuttle goes to Hope Works facility as well, and to Healthcare for the Homeless and Brothers of the Good Shepherd. And so, we continue to build out the network, but I also think it's important for folks to understand there already is half a dozen places that we're shuttling people to right now. Other questions or comments? All right, next committee up is affordable housing.
Is that Lisa?
Lisa, back to you.
All right. So on our affordable housing, the committee has spent our last few meetings really trying to hone in on some specific affordable housing targets, 5-year and annual targets within our core sort of high impact strategy areas. So how many units, what is our goal for how many units we want to construct and acquire and rehab? What is our goal for how many units we want to preserve over the next 5 years? How many permanent supportive housing units do we want to develop? So we've made a lot of progress. We're using kind of a matrix to track all that. We've established some sort of draft targets, and now we're thinking through the cost of what those targets are, which I think will, of course, help us determine how ambitious but feasible those targets really are, which is why I say that they're drafts. And our goal is sometime within the next couple HCC meetings to bring that to the HCC so we can share our thinking and work with all of you. And I invite Councillor Benton and Commissioner Malley, who regularly participate, to contribute or add anything I missed.
Councillor, Commissioner?
I would just say, Mayor, that I appreciate the work that Lisa's doing, trying to focus in, and it's a daunting task, and it's sometimes feel overwhelming when we talk about the need for affordable housing in our community and how much it's really going to cost. We're going to, we have to continue to build capacity, and even in the open market on workforce housing type scales of 80% median income and above. So it's it's a good exercise, and I hope we'll be able to report soon. But it's daunting.
Okay, other items. All right, facilities.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that's me. I have the pleasure to fill in for Lawrence last week. We had a very robust committee meeting on Friday, and we talked about Gibson Medical Center, which basically got the update at today's meeting. We also talked about north of Lomas and property acquisition there. I think the majority of our meeting was spent on the high impact strategy related to sanctioned encampments. But I think what's really important, we talked about the importance, how language really brings us together. Sometimes it divides us. but we really want to adopt language called safe outdoor spaces, which is really what we're looking at as we think about people who are in camp. Right now, we want people to be safe, but we do have people who are camping on our streets, and we've got to look at the impact of that. So Tom O'Neill from UNM gave a great report from visiting a site in Denver. He's visited it twice. He is sharing that budget as well as some of the policies and procedures and contracts done with the local nonprofits. And then Quinn, as well as Tom and another partner, went down to visit Camp Hope in Las Cruces to really talk to the people that are there, to find out from boots on the ground how it's working and how that could work, or how it would be adapted for Albuquerque. So I think some of our takeaways there, we really see the importance of working with our faith-based partners. A lot of those conversations are happening, and we really, I think there was a lot of really positive energy about building out this high impact strategy here in our community, that we need it when we think about, and we're kind of also changing our language from continuum, which kind of seems like a straight line, to the ecosystem that we're really building for our unhoused neighbors, of which these safe outdoor spaces is a component of that. So the chairs of that committee, I can't remember, Lawrence, who they are, but there are several people here that were part of that committee. That's the update.
Anything else? Questions on that? Okay. All right. Let's go back to our first agenda item then with our Government Affairs Director, Isaac Padilla, on legislative and capital outlay update.
Yeah, so the one bill that we were following closely was HB 111. That was the one that allowed people to stay in their homes during a pandemic. That one got stalled in the Senate, so it never made it to the Senate floor. So that was that bill. The other things that we did get is for capital, the city got 1.6 million for affordable housing construction. They got 3.9 million for the gateway centers. And there was an additional 455,000 for youth temporary housing facilities. That was the money that we got in the capital. So we were pleased with that. We were pleased that a lot of the legislators stood up for and helped us fund the Gateway Center. And that's the update. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, they really did good for us in terms of our asks and so forth. So it's a reflection to what they did see is the county putting in funding, obviously the city putting in funding after, the voters 2 years ago voted for it. And then the legislature really acknowledged that, they were sort of supporting those efforts in a meaningful way. And that's always what they really looked for. They wanted us to kind of move first, and then they're there to help as opposed to kind of the other way around. And so I think we really saw that come to fruition this time. And so we appreciate their help. Let's see, comments on legislature, capital outlay. Yes, County Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to kind of add, there was that House Bill 125 that we're waiting to see if the governor signs it, but it's just modifies licensing requirements for behavioral health practitioners. So it just basically makes it easier to attract qualified behavioral health providers. So that's a really good step. And then House Bill 285 allowing emergency medical technicians for emergency responders to transport a person to the ER. So we've got that too. So hopefully she'll sign those two, and that'll help with what we're trying to accomplish. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Isaac, with an update on those?
Yeah, well, I do know that 285, she's not going to sign that bill. We had some discussions with the governor's office on it. We're going to be working with her in the interim, see if we can make some corrections to it and see if we can bring it back. So that was a big bill for us. So we'll be working on that, but I could look into 125 as well. I don't have that in front of me right now, though.
The signing period was Friday, so in other words, it's no longer a question.
Well,
they were either pocket vetoed or signed.
House Bill 125 was signed by the governor.
Awesome.
So she did sign it.
All right.
Thanks, Isaac.
You're welcome.
Okay, very good. Let's see, a couple of housekeeping items that we want to touch on. Our committees as who do the lion's share of the work, and it's wonderful for us to get an update from them each month, but they really we've gotten some feedback that they'd like more working time in between meetings, and actually some of them prefer a longer work session once a month as opposed to a short work session every 2 weeks. And so what we'd like to do is basically meet on the second Tuesday or first Tuesday, depending on the calendar of each month going forward.
Mhm.
And so what that does mean is that our next meeting will actually be, the way it would work out is it'd be about a month from now, so May 11th. And then the next meeting after that would be June 8th. So all of these are on your calendar. The changes that Deb Bassan will make are just removing the two that were creating that log jam with the committees.
Mhm.
Anything else you want to say on that? It's actually a lot simpler than I made it sound. so just stay tuned to Outlook, and there's nothing new that will show up on your calendar.
Yeah, I think it, yeah. Good, that's good.
Okay. All right, well, with that, any other comments from committee members? We're a little 5 minutes over, but okay, with that, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn until next time. Thank you, Commissioner. Looks like we got a motion and a second from Julie and Ike. So with that, we'll stand adjourned. Have a good week, everybody. Thank you.